I think there's a resurgence of anti-Semitism because at this point in time, Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural. And I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role. But without that leading role and without that transformation, Europe will not survive.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Jordan Report, and I am your host, Robert Jordan. Everyone, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. All right, most people never make the connection between the Jews and mass migration, people. But it's in fact, Jews are responsible for mass migration, not just in Europe, but over here in America in particular. These people that you see flooding across our borders, the Jewish community in America is responsible for in everything that they're doing. Now, we don't have to go through a lot of definitions or anything like that. The Jews have defined themselves. The largest organization here in America that is responsible for bringing Venezuelans and all these people who are crossing our border is called HIAS. It's a Jewish refugee settlement organization. And again, people, we're going to let them define themselves.
There are places where being who you are is a punishable offense. There are places where you might be sentenced to death because you chose to live. These places have many names, but the ones who flee have one: refugee. And it is in the name of the refugee that HIAS has dedicated itself for the last 130 years. Created in the name of the Jewish people, for the Jews who fled Tsarist Russia and Soviet Russia, the Jews who fled the death camps of Europe, the Jews exiled from places as varied as Algeria and Cuba and Iran. 4.5 million rescued and resettled so far. When they said, "Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," we were the ones at the docks helping them breathe free. And we are still at the docks, and the deserts, and the cities and camps and lands where people no longer have a home in their homeland. Only now it's a farmer from Darfur, a shop owner from Syria, a family from Ukraine, a child from Colombia, a Christian from Iran, a gay man from Uganda. The 60 million souls who still wander the earth in search of sanctuary. Why? Maybe it's because being Jewish means you don't have to be reminded never to forget. Maybe it's because we are called in our most sacred texts to love the stranger. Or maybe it's because as long as there are still places it is a crime to be who you are, there is still a mandate for us to be who we are. HIAS, for the refugee.
All right, people, back to HIAS. I like to stick to Jewish sources of information when it comes to things like this because they're the most honest, because they're involved. And so when you go to their sources, they'll tell you exactly what's happening. Now here's HIAS. HIAS congratulates board member Alejandro Mayorkas on DHS nomination. Now, how many of us knew that Mayorkas formerly worked for a Jewish refugee settlement organization? This means something, people. This was November 23rd, 2020, when he was nominated. HIAS congratulates board member Alejandro Mayorkas on being named by President-elect Joe Biden to be the new Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. If confirmed, Mayorkas would be the first Latino to head the department that implements and manages U.S. immigration policies. A Cuban-born immigrant who arrived in the United States with his parents as a refugee, Mayorkas served as Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security from 2013 to 2016 and was the Director of Citizenship and Immigration Services during President Obama's first term. Mayorkas was also a primary architect of the Deferred Action Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, program. This is who's ahead or in charge of our immigration policies in the United States.
What does your intelligence tell you about the severity of the threat Jews face in the United States today?
Regrettably, Jacob, the threat is only increasing.
For Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, tracking hate is part of the job, and the work is personal.
You're Jewish. Your mother fled the Holocaust, and you lost 9 family members in the Holocaust. How personal is this to you?
It's extraordinarily personal. My mother's experience very much shaped our understanding of the vulnerability and fragility of life, and it helps drive the imperative to eradicate hate and make people safe.
Nearly 2 years ago at your confirmation hearing, you said that you had wanted to tackle the issue of anti-Semitism once and for all. But what I hear you saying today is it's only gotten worse.
I think that's absolutely right. But our fight has only become more fervent.
All right, people, more Jewish source material, which is where I get most of my research from. Okay, if you pay attention to them, they'll tell you everything. 17 Jewish groups expressed concern over efforts to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, used to normalize deadly invasion and replacement conspiracies. This is the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, people. And this just shows you how much involvement Jews have in mass migration. You have to understand this, people, if you want to stop it. Okay? You have to know the source if you want to stop anything. Jewish Council for Public Affairs and HIAS organized statement condemning anti-Semitic, white supremacist, and anti-immigrant conspiracy theories. Here's the statement. Today, the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, the national convener of Jewish coalitions working to build a just and inclusive American democracy, and HIAS, I just showed you HIAS, the International Jewish Humanitarian Organization supporting refugees, along with 15 other national Jewish organizations, released a joint statement expressing their concerns over the anti-Semitic, white supremacist conspiracy theories animating efforts to impeach Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. This is when they were trying to impeach him. It didn't work, and you know why. Attacks against Mayorkas have invoked the so-called Great Replacement Theory, which relies on dangerous anti-Semitic stereotypes in alleging a vast conspiracy to support an invasion of immigrants, replace white voters, and seize power in the United States, while also fueling anti-immigrant bigotry and white supremacy. The same conspiracy theories have directly fueled violence in Charlottesville, Pittsburgh, Poway, El Paso, Buffalo, and a number of other communities. All right, people, this is the source.
Israelis are bracing for retaliation this afternoon from Iran and its proxies after a deadly strike on a shelter in Gaza. The Israeli government warning the public to stock up on food, water, and to prepare safe rooms at home. NBC's Richard Engel has more.
Hezbollah fired dozens of rockets into northern Israel. Israel does not think this is the retaliation for its assassinations 2 weeks ago of a top Hezbollah commander in Beirut and a Hamas leader visiting Iran. But it may be a warm-up. Israel is bracing for coordinated strikes, possibly missiles and drones from Iran, Hezbollah, and other of its allies across the Middle East. Israeli blood banks are preparing. Hospitals moving patients into basements. Shelters getting ready. The Pentagon announced overnight it's moving a U.S. submarine to the region to join the extra American warships and fighter jets already rushed here. All of this while Israel's ongoing war in Gaza, launched after Hamas's October massacre, is not slowing down. Hamas is still holding around 115 hostages. This weekend, Israel bombed a school in Gaza City being used as a shelter. Local officials say at least 100 people were killed. Israel says at least 19 militants were hiding there. In the U.S., Vice President Harris...
Jews are the primary beneficiaries and promoters of mass migration in the world, and in particular here in the United States. Guess who the next wave of refugees are going to be in the world? This is from Israel, people. Over 550,000 Israelis flee the country amid Gaza war, data shows. More than 500,000 Israelis left the country and did not return during the first 6 months of the Israeli-Gaza war, the Times of Israel reported. The authorities' data indicates that the number of Israelis who left the country since October last year is around 550. More of those who returned by Easter this year in April. You see, the Jews will be the next wave of refugees, people, going across the world.
So I took my most precious thing, which is my board and my sister, my surfboard. Now we're flying to Greece. It was the first flight that we find.
First of all, we leave because of the war and everything. It is all the stressful stuff. We don't have anything to lose, you know. We buy one-way ticket to Cyprus.
It's a shame to be leaving. You know, we wish we would stay, but we got to go, so we're going.
I don't know, like my grandmother, she's Nitzolת Shoah. She came to Israel, she fought for Israel, and like, I'm not sure she would be happy with it. What?
We are escaping now.
And now we are leaving.
We'll never leave the country we love, but for now, we're running away.
It's not like, I'm not proud of it that I'm like...
It's Israel, eventually we're strong.
We are escaping. We are afraid. Everyone is talking about what's going to come, and we didn't want to take the chance.
It's definitely great timing, as long as our flight takes off in another 3 hours. I'm very happy not to be here in the next week or two.
Look, we love our country, but the situation is stressful, and my son is 10 years old.
Again, people, the irony of the people who promoted and profited the most from mass migration and who has now joined the line of refugees themselves. Hey, this cannot be overlooked, people, and things are going to get worse for Israel. Okay, so these refugee lines are going to get longer trying to get out of there. But here's from August the 13th, people, this year. Looking to escape war at home, Israelis seek the refugee status in Portugal. Now, I've showed you where they're in other places. They're all over the world now, and they're on their way back to the United States. As the Israel-Hamas conflict stretches into its 11th month, locals looking to flee its physical and economic perils find a shortcut, albeit temporary, in applying for EU asylum. The Jews are now refugees, people. Since the Hamas onslaught on October 7, Nufar Bar, an Israeli immigration lawyer living in Porto, has seen a non-stop flow of requests from Israelis seeking refugee status. We get them almost every day, said Barr, who works with the Portuguese law firm Cottarelli e Rodrigues, helping Israelis move abroad. Portugal offers many options for those seeking to immigrate, but Barr has found that many Israelis choose to apply as refugees through the asylum application process in Portugal as detailed by the UNHCR. Okay, that's a refugee settlement agency. For one 28-year-old Israeli woman who requested anonymity, applying for refugee status was a natural choice when the outbreak of the conflict caught her off guard. I was on vacation in Europe when the war started, and I did not want to return to Israel, she told the Times. I was thinking of going to Berlin, but the visa application times were too long. My tourist visa was going to expire, so when a friend told me about this option, I didn't hesitate for a single second. Okay, people?
Inside, sounds of Jewish prayer fill an improvised synagogue. Children sing songs in Hebrew. And kitchen staff cook kosher food for 200 residents. Many of them are mothers who fled to Hungary after the Hamas attacks.
It was very afraid for my children to hear the booms, and it was crazy.
I live next to the Lebanoni border. They were afraid that what Hamas did, they're going to do to us. So we were evacuated.
She decided to come here to Hungary, which has one of the largest Jewish populations in Central and Eastern Europe. Locals transformed this once abandoned resort into a refugee centre after Russia's war began last year. For some of the new residents, seeking refuge is nothing new. Mendel Moskovitz escaped eastern Ukraine with his family last year and found a new home in southern Israel, only to find himself faced with war on his doorstep once again last month, a feeling all too familiar.
Throughout history, Jews have been evacuated, Jews have been expelled from their home countries many times over. And unfortunately, there's the famous saying that history repeats itself. We would love to believe that the world is a better place than it used to be. But unfortunately, we are seeing a big rise in anti-Semitism right now all over the world.
Authorities offer the site to the associations of Hungarian and Ukrainian Jewish communities rent-free, and it's closely guarded. But Hungary's anti-migrant rhetoric hasn't changed. People here already had the right to travel to the country as Ukrainian or Israeli nationals. The right-wing government in Budapest has faced accusations of fueling divisions and dealing in anti-Semitic tropes in the past, but it insists it has a zero-tolerance policy on anti-Semitism. In early October, Prime Minister Viktor Orban banned all protests in solidarity with Palestinians, branding them as pro-terror. That's something Rabbi Shlomo Kovesh believes helps create a sense of safety.
Yes, I think demonstrations of such sort should be banned. Hungary has in its society some level of anti-Semitic attitudes, just like unfortunately, just like most societies in the world. But there's almost no physical attacks on Jewish institutions, or no physical atrocities.
Right,
but while some feel secure, others...
People. In less than 1 year's time, Israel has lost virtually everything. Her political support in America is just about gone. Her wealth is gone. Her people are being chased off. Her army has been destroyed. And all this in less than 1 year's time. It's a lesson here, especially for Jews here in America, who think they're untouchable and all-powerful. You can go just as fast as these people went, and that may happen. But anyway, here's what the last prime minister said to his people, or trying to tell his people. This is former Israeli Prime Minister Bennett. He begs the Israelis not to leave. These people are on their deathbed, people. If it ain't this year, it'll be next year. Former Israeli Prime Minister Bennett is begging Israelis not to flee the country, despite the difficult times. This was translated from Hebrew on his Twitter account. He said, "Don't leave the country. Yesterday, a brilliant software engineer I know told me that they are leaving Israel for a country in Europe before the start of the upcoming school year. It made me very sad. True, we're in the most difficult period since the War of Independence. Shuffle in the war, international boycotts, damage to deterrence, 120 Israelis in captivity, thousands of bereaved families, abandoned Galilee, thousands of evacuees, ministers who only care about themselves, loss of control over the economy and the deficit." See, Israel is in deep trouble, people, and she is in her last days. All true, but unequivocally we are capable, and we will get out of this pit. This situation is not destiny, but there is one thing that worries me in particular. Talks about leaving the country. This must not happen. We need all the talent and dedication of the people of Israel just to get out of the pit and relaunch Israel. I have no doubt, with proper active action of renewal, a sort of restart for Israel, the next 50 years of rebuilding creative joy, security, and growth. It will happen much faster than you imagine, because we are a people that knows how to get up quickly from a hard blow. Remember, a total of 3 years after the terrible Holocaust, we established the State of Israel. Who wants to return to the days of the wandering Jew, without real freedom, without a state subject to every anti-Semitic whim? Therefore, not Cyprus, not Portugal, not Jersey or Australia. Stay here, and Israel was created anew. All right, people, that's what's going on in Israel. And all of that you're seeing over there will be here very soon.